There's delicious airplanes, scrumptious skyscrapers, delectable trains, snack-sized teenagers,
Hey, Daniel, don't call us. We'll call you.
and lots of battleship references.
The battleship.
Flying battleship.
Flying battleship.
Just a flying battleship.
I said it looked like a battleship, not that it was a battleship.
It's the Giant Claw, but is it watchable? Thank you, audience.mp3, and welcome everybody to Is It Watchable? I'm your host, Paul. If you're in the mood for a terrifying monster, you're out of luck, because we're doing the Giant Claw. The reason many of us love B movies is the special effects. To see what filmmakers can come up with on tight schedules and no money is a big part of the fun. And the older the movie is, it just gets more fascinating because they also had to deal with technological limitations. But that's still no excuse for phoning it in. We've seen great special effects from some of Hollywood's earliest films. King Kong is a great example of what miniature, stop motion, and rear projection could do. The Tornado in The Wizard of Oz, scary and realistic. And Godzilla used a combination of carefully lit shots and clever camera work to make a guy in a rubber suit look 300 feet tall. Okay, yeah, those were major productions with big budgets, but still, many smaller films were able to achieve pretty impressive results with a little hard work and some TLC. But not so with the Giant Claw. Instead of getting a kick-ass American version of Rodan, we got this guy, and not even animated, a marionette. Mitch McAfee is an electronics engineer and also a pilot. He and his partner, mathematician Sally Caldwell, are working with the military to test a new radar system. During his flight, Mitch spots a massive UFO, which he quickly reports and describes as
Something as big as a battleship had just flown over and past him.
Nothing but Mitch's plane was spotted on radar, but to be safe, the military decides to scramble some jets to investigate. They find nothing, and worse, one of the jets they sent is now missing, so they're super upset with Mitch for wasting everyone's time.
If you were in uniform, I'd have you under arrest and facing general court-martial charges. Unfortunately, you're a civilian, and I can't touch you.
What are you talking
But I
about?
can send a report in on you, and I will.
That was no false alarm, believe
Come
me.
off it, Mitch. You've done enough harm with your flying battleship.
Soon, Mitch and Sally are heading back to New York when something smashes into their plane, knocking out an engine and the pilot. They crash land and escape just before the plane explodes.
What happened? Felt like something colliding with us up there.
Yeah. Flying battleship.
Okay, now you already saw a little bit about this in the intro, but I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on this whole battleship thing. Everybody who's ever reviewed this movie, and there's been a lot of them, has pointed out the crazy number of times they've compared the size of the monster to a battleship. And also the fact that they use a battleship as the comparison. At first, Sally seemed to be using it the most, so I thought perhaps she was making fun of Mitch, which would have been pretty cool, right? But it turns out, the movie's really not that cool. So see how many times you can hear the word battleship. Maybe make a drinking game out of it. The three are rescued by Pierre, a nearby farmer, and taken to his home until help can arrive.
What happened? You tangled with a flying saucer or something?
Oh, nothing so domestic as a flying saucer, officer. Just a flying battleship.
The phone rings and it's General Buskirk. Sick and tired of no one believing him, Mitch almost goes off on the General before being calmed by some of the good stuff.
Bring on more medicine.
Well, flying battleship, pink elephant, same difference. You really should try buttermilk instead.
I said it looked like a battleship, not that it was a battleship.
After sitting down to get drunk, something outside scares the farm animals, so Pierre goes out to check on him. One blood-curdling scream later and he's found face down in the dirt, cowering like a cowardly coward. He rambles on about some local legend called La Cacargne before the sheriff arrives to explain the legend to all of us in the audience.
According to the story they tell, if you see this big bird, it's a sign that you're gonna die real soon.
So our heroes are off to New York again, but before they leave we see this. That there's a giant claw print. Now when you're a man's man like Mitch, you don't need any of that liberal consent garbage. He straight up mouth kisses his coworker while she's asleep. Luckily for him, she's into it, so he avoids a trip to HR upon his return.
The kiss you take is better than you give.
A many-faceted creature, this Mr. McAfee. First engineer and pilot, and now lover and poet.
During some romantic talk, Sally says the trigger word, pattern, which causes Mitch to break out with a map. He plots all the monster attacks until he sees, you guessed it, a pattern.
Wait. A pattern.
Let's take another look at that.
Wait.
Now, I'm no engineer like Mitch McAfee there, but the fact that he found a spiral pattern out of 5 points on a map seems to be a pretty big jump. I mean, you can get a spiral pattern out of 5 points in almost any configuration. You can get a spiral pattern out of 5 points in a straight line. You can find a spiral pattern with just 2 points. But he's the engineer. Yet another pilot spots the giant battleship-sized flying monster.
Once more, a frantic pilot radios in a report on a UFO. A bird. A bird as big as a battleship.
And finally, we get our first good look at this thing, and it is a sight to behold. Mitch, now being the only one to have seen the monster and lived to tell about it, is summoned by General Buskirk. And wouldn't you know it, the new attacks fall neatly into Mitch's stupid pattern theory.
A bird as big as a battleship circled and attacked the plane.
They review pictures taken from cameras mounted on weather balloons and find some nice shots of the monster. Now knowing what they're dealing with, the military springs into action and our heroes are off to the Pentagon. Military pilots track down the monster and it's on.
Like we're hitting a battleship with a slingshot.
Things don't go well for our boys in the sky and everyone ends up dead. A scientist who's been analyzing samples from the various attacks thinks he knows why the monster is indestructible and invisible to radar.
And if there is matter, then there must also be antimatter.
What do you mean to say, Doctor, that this bird is made of antimatter?
That's not what he's saying. Apparently the monster has a force field made of antimatter.
That bird is extraterrestrial. It comes from outer space.
After only revealing himself to pilots and crazy farmers, the monster decides it's time for his coming out party. And the people look mostly kind of irritated. Did the monster just laugh? So people everywhere are panicking and running for their lives. Meanwhile, Sally concludes that the bird came to Earth to build a nest.
The bird came here to build a nest.
Mitch and Sally spot the monster hovering outside his apartment window. Alright, now the movie's already established that the monster is a worldwide threat and has been terrorizing people across the globe. And yet, Mitch has been attacked on 2 separate occasions, it visited him at the farmhouse he was holed up in, and now it shows up at his apartment? Our heroes race back to Pierre's farm to search for the nest, since that's where the giant claw print was discovered. Luckily, while they're there, the monster returns to the nest and they see the egg. Pierre, still being a big sissy, makes a run for it while Mitch and Sally blast away at the egg. This understandably upsets the monster, and it eats Pierre. Driving back in Pierre's car, some crazy teenagers do their best to attract the monster. This movie isn't much for surprises, so of course the teens get what's coming to them. At long last, we get the big idea.
Now, if this thing of mine works, and we can get close, real close, and bombard that bird's antimatter energy shield with a stream of Masic atoms, I think we can destroy that shield. The bird would be defenseless then except for beak, claws, and wings.
While they work on the weapon, the monster decides he's in the mood for train. An explosion at the lab! Mitch is hurt! They think he failed, but not our Mitch.
Oh, of course you don't know. The explosion was no accident.
Now, wait a minute, McAfee. Wait a minute, are you trying to tell me that that machine of yours works?
Sure.
They mount the weapon on the back of an airplane and go up in search of the monster. They find him noshing on a skyscraper and decide to lure him away, making a few passes King Kong style. During the chase, we get more destruction and more close-ups of the monster. Finally, they fire the weapon and the force field is disabled. With nothing to protect him, they circle back and blast him with rockets. It's a direct hit, everyone's happy, and the monster sinks lifelessly into the ocean. Hey, give this movie some credit. No final shot of an egg hatching, no last scene with an eyelid slowly opening. The thing's just dead. This might seem like the type of movie American International Pictures would release, but actually it was released by Columbia Pictures, a pretty respected studio. And if you watch the movie, you'll see that the acting, directing, writing, and most of the production values are actually pretty good. The thing that gives this movie its reputation is that stupid monster. Producers reportedly wanted stop-motion great Ray Harryhausen to create and animate the monster, which would have been awesome because he was one of the special effects guys of the time. But due to budget constraints, they instead had to use a special effects company out of Mexico City who provided them with a marionette. And not even a good marionette. Much has been written about the embarrassment that this movie caused the cast and crew. The actors reportedly didn't even know what the monster looked like until the premiere. And when the audience started to laugh every time they saw the monster, actor Jeff Morrow, who played Mitch, decided to quietly sneak out of the theater before anybody could recognize him. And watching The Giant Claw has been challenging over the years, not just because it's a bad movie, but because it's been tough to find, hard copy or streaming. Since the movie was first released, there's only been 2 VHS releases and 1 DVD. But luckily, as of this posting, you can catch the movie in its entirety right here on YouTube. So The Giant Claw, is it watchable? The Giant Claw is so bad it's good, occasionally approaching so bad it's great territory, but I don't want to get carried away. At only 75 minutes long, the movie benefits from some generous editing, a taut script, and a straight-to-the-action story approach. Even if it does rely heavily on convenient plot devices and glazes over its plot holes with unintelligible scientific mumbo-jumbo, it never sits too long in one spot, allowing it to breeze through its runtime. But of course, what really makes this movie is that dumb monster. It's the whole reason to watch, and luckily for us, they don't shy away from showing it. So many movies with way better monsters only give us glimpses of their creatures. But as bad as this monster looks, it's as if they're proud of it, giving us close-up after close-up after close-up. Now, I'm not complaining. If they showed it any less or if it looked any better, I wouldn't even be reviewing this movie. Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to join me when I go back to a time when making a movie about a Marvel comic book character didn't automatically mean box office success. Yup, I'm taking one for the team and doing Howard the Duck. And don't forget to subscribe.